Last Christmas I made 10 little mahogany clocks and I gave them away as Christmas gifts, and I really enjoyed doing that. And this Christmas I know it's not for over half a year yet, but I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I sort of been thinking, well, how about making a Christmas candy bowl? I guess it's because I just finished making this segmented flower pot, and I really like doing that too. And I kind of got making bowls and pots on the brain, I guess. So here I am back in the drawing program designing a little candy bowl. Now this will be considerably smaller than that segmented flower pot. It'll be less than half the size. It'll be maybe about 6 inches in diameter. Just the sort of thing you could pass around and say, would you like a candy? As I mentioned, Christmas isn't going to be here for over half a year yet, but because I'm planning on making about a dozen of these things, I want to get started. It's going to be a lot of little pieces that have to be cut up. Now this doesn't mean that I'm not going to do other projects in between, but right now I feel like doing this, and I've found that if you don't feel like doing something and you do it, it's work. If you feel like doing it, it's fun, and I want to have fun in my workshop. If you watched my YouTube video about the segmented flower pot, you'll remember that each one of those rings had 30 segments. Well, I'm going to take it easy on myself here. I'm just going to have 12 segments per ring. So that works out that each cut has to be 15 degrees. I ripped up a piece of scrap 2x4 here, the idea being I'm going to make a couple of practice bowls. You know, I don't want to be wasting a bunch of the expensive lumber on something that might not look too good. And as you can see, I'm doing it the fast and easy way here. This small piece catcher that I made sucks the little pieces up just as fast as I can cut them off. Gluing up these cheap scrap pieces of spruce here for the test bowls takes about the same amount of work. In fact, exact same amount of work as if I was using real expensive mahogany or oak. My plan right now is that each one of these bowls is going to be made up from a solid base plus 3 rings. Now each ring has 12 segments, so that's a total of 36 segments per bowl. And if there's a dozen bowls, that's 432 segments. You know, that's going to be a lot of cutting and gluing I got to do yet. I needed a piece of scrap that was about 6 inches wide, and I didn't have it, so I took a 2x4 and planed the twist out of it and glued the 2 edges together, and now I've got a piece that's about 7 inches wide and long enough to make 3 bases. Now I know I could have used the jointer to make both sides smooth. However, the thickness planer, as well as making the second side smooth, it'll also make the board the same thickness all the way along. There now, it's pretty hard to tell. That used to be 2 boards. Alright, half of 6 1/4 is 3 1/8. And there we are, the 3 bases are ready to be glued on once the rings are sanded smooth. Well, the glue in those joints is pretty well cured now, at least to the point where I don't need to worry about the pieces breaking apart. And I may as well get rid of a little bit of this extra squeeze out here before I run it through the drum sander. If you happen to watch my video on the segmented flower pot, you'll remember that I used this makeshift sled as a carrier to help pass the rings through the drum sander. This was the first pass, and it took off so little you can hardly even notice it. But after about 6 or 7 passes, all that glue squeeze out was removed. Those rings are sanded more or less perfectly flat now. They should glue together really well. Well, it's the next day, and last night I did glue 3 of those rings together, and I glued them on one of those 3 bases. So now we have a bowl blank ready for the lathe. Those 8 little rubber buttons would probably hold the bowl on tight enough, but I just want to add a little extra support here, just to make sure. And here we go with the very first cut, on this bowl anyway. I'm kind of sorry I didn't show you, but I've already had this bowl turned around once, and I grooved out the base a little bit so the buttons would grab hold a little better. Now I can get at the inside. You know, I can envision this in mahogany. I think it'd look pretty good, especially if I take and make one of the rings with alternating aspen mahogany segments. I'm going to turn this around here and work on the bottom of the bowl. I want it to look more like the bottom of a bowl. If I concave the bottom of the bowl, it'll have the tendency to be a little bit more stable when it's sitting on a flat surface. You know, I think I've done about all I'm going to do on this particular test ball. I'm not even going to varnish it probably. And I've got 2 other blanks yet that I can experiment on. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time because I can put that time into actually making the real thing. Now, before I go to all the work of making up the other 2 test samples there, and also going out and spending a lot of money on the real mahogany, I better check and make sure this is actually going to work. You know, I think this is going to work. Would you like a Christmas candy?